How's everybody doing on our first week of the new eclipse cycle? We're in Virgo now after the new moon solar eclipse. How's everybody doing? Discombobulated from last week or surprisingly less than you expected happened? But we have a whole 5 months of change because that energy that we experienced last week at the time of the eclipse was the energetic stamp for that period, for this whole Virgo period. As the world pays attention, Virgo. All right, here we go. This is the week of September 25th, and we're going to touch into the first day of October 2025, CIRF report number 471. And I always talk very slow, and this can be very annoying, but on YouTube and Rumble you can speed it up. I recommend a 1.5 or even 2.0 speed, and that might be a little bit better for some of you. Okay, it is what it is. All right, big shout out to CJ Star Monkey, who has the by far the biggest comment of the week, best comment award. Instead of a bigger boat, us surfers are going to need more wax. Hear, hear. It wasn't just me that liked that comment. And thank you for all the comments, by the way. I read them all, and I really appreciate you helping out the algorithm. Let's go ahead and get started. Just a little touch into this. Right there. There's our slide. We're going to talk on the top half first. You can't see it all, but top half is for the influence. We're going to start there, and then we're going to do the solution. What is recommended for this week? All right, you are here right at the beginning of the new eclipse cycle. Next up, we have on October 6th an Aries full moon. And it's not an eclipse, just a regular old full moon, but Aries. All right, and we are leaving September this week. Look at just surprisingly little happening. Most of these alignments that we were experiencing in the eclipse week last week, CIRF number 470, very strong, edgy, change-oriented alignments, and now most of those or all of those are just waning out. And then we get into October, just one little sliver. We have one alignment going exact, and that is Mercury square Jupiter. And if we come up here, you can see it starting. So somewhere around the 26th or so, it gets stronger, and then our last day go exact. So that's really all that's happening. Obviously, you have the far out planets are in retrograde. You'll have Neptune touching back into Pisces later on in October. You'll have a new moon in Libra on the 21st of October. Full moon I already mentioned. And going to retake some of these grand trines, right? And a lot of exciting times coming. But this week is not all that like kung pao like last week. And it's kind of a breath of fresh air, in my opinion. Seems like this big disruptive energy, including the eclipse. But then now this week is sort of like a come down with a grand air trine that's waning out. So remember, that grand air trine has Uranus and Pluto in it, so change and transformation is still underlying it all. So we're looking at smooth changes, and I'm calling this sort of an assimilation week. So we had topsy-turvy week. Now this week will be more of, but with a waxing moon, first quarter moon, it's not just yawn and then go to sleep. It's a breath of fresh air so that I can clean up and get ready and start working on my goals, working on my lunar goals, my eclipse goals. You got 5 months to get those done. And this is the week to start it. And then I also included this red. This is the square I mentioned, Mercury squared Jupiter. and we'll talk about that throughout. Okay, so Thursday the 25th, that's where we begin. Always like to get a baseline of where the sun is. Sun is at 2 degrees, 54 minutes of Libra, so justice and balance and all the Libra types of things, but the sun is on a grand air trine, and it's still fairly tight, a couple degrees off of orb. Uranus and Pluto very tightly in a trine orb. So grand air trine is dashed, meaning that it's waning out. And the whole kite here, if we include the mini grand trine, that's also important, but very transformative, easy, smooth energy. The only real, continuum or conflict per se would be the opposition. And the sun is the identity, the soul's path, the light that burns from within, the direction generally in life. And then that's opposing Neptune, but Neptune is the idealist and the fantasy, but what's best for me. And so we're trying to work that out with all this transformation and change. But again, this is more of if it's a grand trine, it's a smoothing out of it. It's massive. It's very mental because it's all air. Lots of logic, lots of change, transformation, and about where I am in the world, especially with Neptune opposing the sun. So anyway, we have heightened mental activity, intellectual breakthroughs, insights. That's a Uranus thing. Electric currents of change pulsating in the collective mind. And all of these events that we're seeing, slow drips of transformation and new ways of thinking, or maybe a return to old ways of thinking, as the case may be, especially with the far out planets in retrograde, sort of a return to what has been. So Uranus is there, Pluto is there. They are meaning retrograde. And so looking in the past and returning possibly, or bringing into mind the way it used to be before we got propagandized to the nth degree. The feelings associated with this grand air trine, exhilaration and excitement for the unknown, a special amount of curiosity, wanting to understand, intellectual curiosity, thirst for knowing, empowerment, and a drive to make a difference. And then on Friday, while the grand air trine is waning out even more, we have a temporary grand water trine. And this is all water, so emotional activity and intuitive understanding are there, powerful transformative experiences towards that growth. But it's a smooth thing, smooth but strong. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, transformed and renewed, because you have moon in Scorpio, fast-moving moon. So it's going to be done before Saturday, the 27th. And this is really where the main energy for the week. At the beginning of the week, the main energy is going to be the grand air trine. At the end of the week, the main energy is going to be Mercury square Jupiter. And this can be challenging because the square is conflict and pressure. So the challenge is to balance out intellectual pursuits with emotional needs and caring. What do you care about? And it's exaggerated. Jupiter is exaggeration, so it's an exaggerated caring, which has a chance of looking like control. Caring too much is overcaring, which is going to be in control. And that is a nice segue to our rave reading. So this is a very appropriate discussion on this square in correlating with the rave that we'll talk about later. So feelings are going to get stronger with this square here, but it starts on Saturday, mainly starts on Saturday, maybe a little bit before that if you're really fine-tuned in the subtle energies. But right now we're looking at a 6 degree orb. I think basically 16 and 22, so 6 degrees of orb on the square, so it does start a little bit earlier. I normally start looking at squares with 8 degree orb, so this is 2 degrees inside of that, so the feelings get stronger throughout the week, and it's overwhelm and indecision when faced with multiple viewpoints, and multiple viewpoints are coming in with this grand air trine. Empathy and compassion for those in need, and a certain amount of restlessness. Mercury wants to figure it out, and with the pressure on it, it's like the spotlight on ways of thinking associated with the caring that we talked about with Jupiter in Cancer. Then on Sunday, the 28th, just the same kind of stuff. Grand air trine waning out more, and the square getting stronger. And here's our first quarter moon, which is another square. This square, sun square moon, is the first quarter moon, and it is pressuring you and encouraging you, inciting you to get started. And so the feeling states are an increase in energy, growth, maturation, determination is there, especially in Capricorn. A time for taking action, making progress towards goals. It's also a time to overcome obstacles, but that pressure gives you the confidence to get through it. And that's not even with moon in Capricorn, but the moon in Capricorn, first quarter moon in Capricorn is this on steroids. So there is that big feeling of power. You're able to pound through things, climb things, and really get started on your lunar goals. So that's good. Then on Tuesday, the 30th, we do have the moon in Capricorn just after the first quarter moon, creating a T-square on Mercury. So there's a conflict between the head and the heart with this square. And then we already talked about that square. So just temporary thoughts versus emotions and goals. You might see like caring has this threat, this feeling of threat against your will, or you can't make progress towards your goals because now you have to go help. Something like that. There might be that conflict there. And at the same time, the willingness and the confidence, determination to get started on your goals. Here's Wednesday the 1st. This is when this square goes exact at 3:59 p.m. Mercury square Jupiter, a pressure to deeply care about expansively delivering justice, balance, harmony, while also you have to care. So you're going to have an increase in caring, and I think that will feed into the world as paying attention in the grand air trine. And that, okay, let's just go to the I-Ching, because this helps us to figure out where to do our conversion chart. And it's a 444 because you have hexagram 44 with change line 4. So it's coming to meet, liaison, embodies the energy of unexpected encounters and the allure of powerful but potentially disruptive forces. It warns the need to approach such encounters with awareness and vigilance. Pay attention, as they can shift dynamics quickly. With change line 4, the energy focuses on an internal struggle between attraction and caution. This line stirs feelings of temptation, curiosity, even excitement, as something enticing appears within reach. At the same time, it invokes thoughts of hesitation and wariness, as the situation carries an undertone of risk or imbalance. This is akin to what we just talked about with the square, Mercury square Jupiter, all week long. So we're going to look at Mercury right when the square goes exact. Okay, but for now, let's go into this the influence. Let's summarize it for you. It's not like nothing's happening. You get the mini grand trine connected with the grand air trine, and that's called a kite, because these points on the mini grand trine are the same. Pluto and Uranus are the same points that are on the grand air trine. We have the first quarter moon, and it's a little extra powerful waxing moon. And so I think it's a perfect summary, as we normally see with the I-Ching. These I-Ching readings are trying to get all of the energies that are possible and put it together into one sort of archetypical energy. And this one says liaison, we just read. So we have temptation, caution. There's a conflict. There's an inner conflict. So here's the influence. This week brings a welcome sense of stability and energetic harmony following last week's disorienting eclipse. With the Sun and Mercury in Libra, themes of balance, diplomacy, and harmony take center stage, because you have the Sun and Mercury in Libra. A supportive grand air trine fosters transformative mental clarity, aligning beautifully with the waxing first quarter moon for growth and insight. While a few squares introduce minor tension, they offer opportunities for growth through more challenges. The I-Ching 44 line 4 reading highlights the interplay of attraction and temptation, urging mindful restraint, curious openness, self-control, and thoughtful choices to navigate this balanced yet dynamic energy field. All right, there's your overview, but now what do we do about it? As we've seen in the past, the right way of behaving isn't always how you feel. If we just feel a certain way and then behave, you might get into problems. Like if you're in a lot of anger, then you can accidentally break things, and then now what? Now what are you going to do? Not that breaking is always bad. Da 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 da. All right. Here we go. Let's go to the solution. You put our change line in, which was on 4. That becomes yin. Do we get 57? Gentle penetration. We're looking for solutions. All right, so consider embodying behaviors of subtlety, persistence, and adaptability. Focus on approaching situations with patience and quiet influence, as progress often comes through consistent, gentle effort rather than force. Remain open to listening deeply and observing the nuances of your environment. Remember, everything's changing over the course of this 5 months, so we need to step back and observe too, not just do. Allow your insights to guide your actions. Okay, now we need to do the conversion chart. And we used Mercury on the square. At the time of the exact square, Mercury at 22 degrees 34 minutes is in Rave Mandala 32. And it's also in Sidereal Virgo. So that's where we go. So first, let's just briefly cover the Rave Mandala, and this is going to be in the solution. So pay attention here. The goal of Gate 32 is to master the delicate balance between continuity and transformation. The only thing which endures is change. And so the title of the gate itself is duration. It means continuing despite all the change. And then line 2 is restraint. Line 2, the control of power for the benefit and enhancement of harmony. That's an exact replica of Mercury squared Jupiter in Cancer. The potential for transformation that may be beneficial to others. And then the decrement side is ruled by Jupiter. It's a tendency and frustration, particularly from a position of strength, to social withdrawal rather than persistent control. So instead of staying with the crowd, with the social, you leave, and in doing so, releases the control. The frustration with controls or being controlled. And what's so interesting about control, when I have couples that realize or start talking about the control mechanisms within the relationship, there's a paradox, because when someone realizes that they have been feeling controlled, then they can access how they are actually controlling. So both parties generally feel equally controlled, and in different ways, much different ways, because we're on opposite ends of the continuum. But that's the neat thing. So when you feel controlled, look at the control as well. Look at the other side of it. All right, but that's not the goal of this. The goal of this line is to develop the wisdom to know when to exercise constraint and restraint and when to release control, creating transformative change that benefits the collective without disrupting essential harmony. A really intricate, detailed way of incorporating all the energies for this week, including Sun and Mercury in Libra. So themes that you should be focused on is the power dynamics, responsible management of social engagement or familial, interpersonal engagement, social responsibility, communal benefit, the tension between control and freedom, transformation through measured action. All right, so how do we balance this line? Let's use the increment and decrement. The Venus is on the increment and should be invoked when harmony and relationship need to be prioritized, specifically in the process of change. So when change is needed or is happening in the interpersonal world, you need to think of Venus. And so it has the potential for transformation that may be beneficial for others. In other words, controlling the situation might be warranted so that people start to change or facilitate the change. But Jupiter is the ruler of the decrement and should be invoked when expansion and growth require releasing control. So what is best for the social group or the familial group? If it's best, if more expansion and growth are required, but the only way to do it is to release control, then we should probably invoke the wisdom to know. The tendency and frustration, particularly from a position of strength, to socially withdraw rather than persist control. So, how do we balance this out? These are some practical suggestions. When feeling frustrated, ask whether you're over-controlling, i.e. need Jupiter to release the control, or under structuring. In structuring is using the structure to have power and control over the situation. So we need a little bit of Venus. Create beauty in your boundaries. Make limitations feel like artistic choices rather than restrictions. And then develop regular check-ins to assess whether your current balance of control and release serves the greater good. And then lastly, recognize why you're doing what you're doing. If you're controlling or leaving, make sure the leaving, for example, is not an escape, but rather a recognized purpose behind it. Instead of escapism, it's the best for the group. That's why I'm leaving, right? Or it's the best for the group. That's why I'm controlling. All right, good stuff here. Let's get to our summary slide. All right, and we had gentle penetration for the I-Ching. We had duration restraint. We just read that from the gate 32 of the rave. We had Sidereal Virgo and the first quarter moon. So here we go. We're looking for overlaps of behaviors. The big picture is get your engine started and get into gear. Start in on your lunar and eclipse goals. But it's got to be done in a Virgo sort of way. Plan your week carefully before the week begins. Ensure the tasks are prioritized. And then also rely more on routines and productivity habits So that was mainly came from both the I-Ching and perfect overlap with Sidereal Virgo, which is about repetitiveness and habits and routines. That's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck this week. That way you can kind of use the paradox of it's smooth sailing, but it's going to be pretty difficult if you try to make these big, profound changes and huge projects and overwhelming and all that. It's better if you start slow. Behaviors are not big, bold, and impulsive. Instead, they are more subtle, gentle, and thorough. Be methodical and well-planned, stay the course, and rely on the power of repetitious consistency. Then the only thing we haven't talked about in the solution is the rave mandala, the control versus being controlled or withdraw as a means of the best for the group. Number 4, put awareness into the rave continuum, especially towards the end of the CIRF week. Because remember, that's when Mercury hits that gate right when it goes, right when that square is kung pao, it's gone exact. That's what unlocks this. And regardless if you feel like it's not about being a controlling or not or being controlled person, it's about realizing that every time people are together, there's this tendency of getting hidden needs met. And anytime you have hidden needs being met or trying to get met, it's an unconscious activity, and it's basically control. We try to control our way, and there's no one way to control, obviously. There's multiple ways to control, and it happens just about every time people get together for any reason. If people are in the same proximity, there's a high chance that a need will go unfulfilled and then an unconscious control will come in and try to do it. So it's about seeing that this week and coming into awareness of that and your particular tendencies or whatever. And then social engagement, gentle penetration. It's neither one, social or antisocial. 2, it's all about social. 3, the first quarter and waxing moon is more social. And Sidereal Virgo is probably less social, just in general. So once again, it's pretty balanced there. It's not overwhelmingly strong either way. But I'd say there's a slight chance, especially with the rave mandala, there's a good opportunity in the social world. And, putting your awareness on this control or being controlled thing or withdrawing, if I tend to just withdraw instead of staying with it to influence some control over it, the Aquarians don't like doing that. I can speak for my Aquarian nature. That's not something I'm used to. So it'll be good for me to look into this week. And I recommend that you guys as well take that opportunity. All right, everybody. Namaste. Thank you for being here. And I want to invite you to our live show on Wednesday where we'll do Dreambot. We'll do a live astrology reading. Take all your questions and answer them, hopefully. All right. We'll see you in a couple of days. Take care. Namaste.